In this video, we're going to start the conversation about security in the FileMaker platform. Now, first off, the FileMaker platform has a number of different features that comprise the entire security picture. There's the individual user login, which is how FileMaker can determine if the user is allowed to even log onto a file. There's actually file level encryption, which is called EAR, or encryption at rest. There's also network encryption, which is the point-to-point encryption between the server and a client, also known as SSL, right? So a lot of you have heard of SSL encryption or an SSL certificate. There's also field level encryption, where individual fields can actually have their own encrypted content, different than the rest of the file and different from any other field. So there are a number of different levels of encryption within the FileMaker platform. Also, there's a number of other security features in the FileMaker platform, one of which allows developers who are building a solution which has multiple files to allow a FileMaker file to only trust the other files that are part of a solution. So, say for example, you have a contacts file and a separate invoices file. You could actually tell those two files to only trust each other and not allow communication with any third file. Now, with the modern FileMaker platform, most of the time, these kinds of things would be consolidated into a single file, which makes things much simpler. But some more advanced complex solutions might have more than one file. So that's where this file trust issue comes in. FileMaker refers to this as file access for authorized files. That capability is managed under the File menu, down to Manage, down to Security, and then you can see that option right here. And that allows us to set the files that will trust each other. Now, on top of this, there's extra security related items that you can implement yourself, such as an audit trail, which allows you to track what the users are doing as they perform tasks in the FileMaker platform. So you could track what data the user enters, what data the user edits, maybe what data the users view. And that can become important if you have sensitive information or confidential information. If you're in the United States and healthcare is part of your job, then you're familiar with HIPAA. HIPAA mandates all these kinds of things, especially the audit tracking and audit trails, which is honestly very useful when tracking down who made an edit to a particular file. So in summary, we have the ability for each user to have their own username and password. We have the ability for the FileMaker files themselves to be encrypted as they sit on a hard drive. We have a separate ability where the network traffic on the server between the server and the client is encrypted. We also have the ability for individual fields to have their contents separately encrypted. We also have the ability for a multiple file solution to only trust a set of authorized files. And then lastly, through some development work and some scripting, we have the ability to implement an audit trail. Now, in addition to this, FileMaker Server and FileMaker Cloud can be administered with a username and password, so there's a level of security that can be placed upon that server administration. However, that's somewhat abstract. I would assume that most people would assume that accessing a server would have its own security and really would not be part of their specific job unless you're an IT person or the FileMaker person or some sort of server administrator staff. And strictly speaking, you don't have to have any interaction with the FileMaker server administrative console to access and use a FileMaker file. So now that we've introduced the basic concepts of security in the FileMaker platform, I want to talk about FM Starting Point real quick. First off, FM Starting Point ships with no security turned on. We want everyone to be comfortable with FM Starting Point right out of the box. So out of the box, it ships in a very unsecure state. What does this mean? Well, what this means is that a brand new user who wants to play with FM Starting Point doesn't have to worry about security. In fact, when people first start building a custom application, they first want to solve a business process. The first thing in their mind is not how to encrypt some feature that doesn't yet exist, right? So this is kind of a fundamental, and sometimes people forget this, but if you're going to open a new tool out of the box, the first thing you want to do is use the tool, not figure out how to lock the tool up, right? So If you get a new hammer, the first thing you do is learn how to hammer stuff. And then when you're done with the hammer, you learn how to put it in the toolbox and lock it so no one steals it, right? So that's kind of the way FM Starting Point is. It's designed for you to play with it, to use it, to learn from it. And initially, it has no password. Now, real quick, when you create a brand new file with the FileMaker platform, FileMaker actually does set an initial username and password. The username is admin, and the password is blank, like nothing. And so, of course, you wonder, how did FileMaker log onto the file automatically? Because you just double-clicked it and it worked. It never asked you for a password. That's because when you open the FileMaker file up, if you go under the File menu options, down to File options, a brand new FileMaker file is set to auto-enter admin no password. So while the security is there, it's kind of hidden from you so you don't have to worry about it. Once again, security is not something you worry about the first 2 hours that you're playing with the FileMaker file, right? So it's kind of taken out of the picture. That's the same way that FM Starting Point works. It has that same basic admin no password feature, and it automatically enters that so people can play with it, learn about it, start to use it, and then along the way they realize security is important, and then they can change the password to something that's not admin no password. There's a handful of really hardcore security people in the FileMaker community, and sometimes I have interactions with them and they're very unhappy that I ship FM Starting Point without that security turned on. But FM Starting Point is a training application as well as something that can grow into a serious business app. So just like everything else in the world, we start with baby steps and we progress with you learning just the basics, and then we get more and more advanced, and to the point where you're actually using the file, and then you start sharing it with people. And at the point where you start sharing it with other users and you start really using it, that's typically where users go, oh, we need to turn on the security and take that part of this much more seriously. So just remember that FM Starting Point starts off as a basic trainer application, and we don't put whole layers of security in there to try to confuse people.